Hello, my name is Morelia Vasquez, and I'm going to talk about discrimination and the paper menagerie. Discrimination can affect your moral values, your self-esteem, and cause stress and anxiety. The Paper Menagerie is a heartbreaking story that makes you see the world differently. A Chinese woman is bought by an American man to have a good life. They have a son, which suddenly becomes the light of her eyes, her hope. She teaches him everything about her culture, even the language, and they connect as any mother and son would. When he grows up, he lets himself be intimidated by an American boy who tells him that his culture is trash. He then feels embarrassed of being part Chinese, so he stops talking to his mom, playing with his origami toys, and practicing the Chinese culture. When his mother dies, he reads a letter that she wrote to him that made him regret the way he treated her all those years. There are a number of ways in which Jack's mom's moral values were affected by her own experiences of discrimination. When she lived in Hong Kong, she suffered persecution when she tried to learn English, and I quote, "If I was caught trying to learn English, I was beaten," Jack's mom explained in the letter. This may be the reason she didn't want to learn English, for her family. She was scared off early in life. She thought learning another language would bring her problems. Another example is how she was devalued at such young age. Explaining her reasons for marrying Jack's dad, she wrote, and I quote, "If I can cook, clean, and take care of my American husband, he'll give me a good life." This decision was made to get out of a hard life. She didn't want to keep getting beaten, but marrying somebody just to have a good life does not show good morals. She didn't have anybody to teach her how to live properly, so she made decisions that she thought were better than the alternative. The catalog was a solid example of how Jack's mother's moral values are changed and basically destroyed because nobody should ever sell themselves on a paper. And I quote, "That was how I got into the catalog with all those lies and met your father," she told her son. When she decided to do the catalog, she may have thought about getting a good life. But maybe, deep inside, she wanted the world to give her some value. Maybe she wanted to see how much she was worth, not only money-wise, but as a person. Jack's mother showed she had a low self-esteem and she let other people manage her life. Being a little girl alone with no parents to guide her, it's understandable how she didn't know how to speak for herself. Self-esteem is something that most people don't appreciate. It's who you are, and if you want others to love and accept you, you need to love and accept yourself first. In the story, the parents didn't teach Jack to appreciate his culture. He underappreciated where he comes from by saying that, and I quote, "Other families don't have moms who don't belong." Even though it is understandable that he feels like he doesn't fit, he didn't have to be ashamed of his mom. Everybody only has one mother, and we must appreciate them. Nothing says insecure more than being with someone just because they can give you something you don't have. The mom didn't have any family left, but she fell in love with what the American guy could have give her. Jack can't help thinking, and I quote, "What kind of woman puts herself in a catalog so that she can be bought?" The life she had was worse than the thought of being bought and being a good wife to a complete stranger. She wanted to fix her inner wounds. Sometimes, people with a low self-esteem try to make up for not loving themselves, so they try to love others how they should have loved themselves and more. In this story, Jack's mother loved her son more than she loved herself, and she showed it by telling him, and I quote, "Don't worry about me. This is not a big deal. Just do well in school." As she was lying down on the hospital bed, dying, she could have told him anything she wanted, but she chose to tell him to keep on living and not worry about her at all. Being born and raised in China caused Jack's mom to have some real issues about the rest of the world. Stress and anxiety are caused by many things, and a very important issue related to these problems in our lives is culture shock. A part of the story mentioned that Jack's father, and I quote, must have realized that it was a mistake to have tried to take a Chinese peasant girl and expect her to fit in the suburbs of Connecticut. Moving from a town to a city sometimes is really shocking, so imagine moving from a totally different country to the suburbs. She wouldn't have fit in as easily as she would have in a big city like New York. Seeking acceptance from family is a stress trigger. Why does somebody have to beg for the family to want them? It is not normal, and it really affects our mental health. Jack observes the various ways that his mom's attempt to win his love. She tried to use more English, and I quote, Mom learned to cook American style. After being pushed away by her own son, she tried learning everything she could to get close to him, but every effort she made seemed to be in vain. Being afraid to talk to her son was the last strike for her. He was her hope for a better life, and he ruined it. So when he started being rude to her, made her afraid to talk to him, she was completely devastated. Jack's mom tried her best to get close to her son. She tried everything she could to rebuild the relationship they had before Jack changed his attitude towards her. And I quote, Mom reached out to touch my forehead. I brushed her hand away. Mom dropped her hands to her side. She sat, looking from Dad to me and back to Dad again. She tried to speak, stopped, and tried again, and stopped again. Anybody that's been told to be quiet for a long time is always going to be afraid to speak, especially if the person who tells you to be quiet is your son. Stories are a way to talk about life experiences and make us learn from them. The Paper Menagerie is a shocking story, but it is real. Situations like that happen all the time, but they don't make the front page in the newspaper, so we don't hear about it. And that fact makes us indifferent when we encounter these situations. Discrimination separates nations, families, and friends. Jack's mom's story is only the tip of the iceberg regarding Asian versus American discrimination. Anti-Asian discrimination is demonstrably on the rise. Asians, who currently represent 5% of the U.S. population, continue to be severely discriminated against as a minority group in the media. Discrimination is a universal problem, and we need to be aware and sensitive and try to help the Jack's moms of the world find their voices. Thanks for listening to me. Here are some references that you can use to learn more about the Paper Menagerie and what happens in the anti-Chinese USA discrimination information, and how we should do something to stop this, because like I said, discrimination only separates people and nations and families and friends, and it's not good. Life was not meant to be in conflict. Life was meant to be loved and understanding and free. Thanks.